Above the quiet moon of Meridon, 12 white ships floated in orbit, bearing the symbol of Earth's medical corps, a red cross surrounded by olive branches, glowing softly against the black of space. These ships carried no weapons, no shields strong enough for battle. They were floating hospitals, filled with doctors, nurses, and field medics trained to save lives across the galaxy, no matter what flag those lives served under. They moved through war zones, not as enemies, but as healers neutral, protected by old treaties respected even by the most violent species. But that belief ended today. On the bridge of the lead vessel, Hope's Light Chief Medical Officer Dr. Leon Monroe stood at the main console, checking casualty updates from the surface. The Voracks were fighting the Thren in a brutal ground conflict, and Earth's medical fleet had arrived under Concord orders to help both sides treat the wounded. Dr. Monroe had seen enough wars to know there were never enough hands to stop the bleeding. That morning, she had stabilized 26 soldiers from both factions, including a Vorax youth with plasma burns over most of his body. She hadn't slept in 30 hours, and yet she felt calm. This was her calling. Her oath was not to flags, but to lives. Then the alarms began. A T first. It was just a sensor ping, unusual energy spikes from the far side of the moon. It could have been a reactor surge from a damaged ship or a planetary storm. But within seconds, more signals appeared, and not one of them matched friendly codes. 12 ships. Then 20. Then 36. Stealth signatures. No identification. Moving fast. The bridge grew still. Are those Voracks? One technician whispered, voice trembling. They're not broadcasting anything, another replied. They're in attack formation. Dr. Monroe leaned closer to the screen. That can't be right. They know we're neutral. They know we're medics. But the Vorax fleet didn't slow down. They accelerated. A voice came through the emergency channel Vorax tongue, cold and mechanical. Translated into Earth Standard, it said only, no more mercy. The first shots tore through the outermost hospital ship, Beacon 4. Its hull cracked open like a tin can under pressure. There were no shields strong enough to stop a full war-grade railgun barrage. No weapons to fight back. Just screams. Just silence. Within seconds, 2 more ships were gone. Monroe stood frozen. Her mind couldn't process what was happening. These were medical ships, clearly marked, broadcasting their neutrality. They should have been untouchable. Send the distress signal, she ordered finally, her voice barely a whisper. But who's going to get here in time? Her aide asked. Everyone, she said. As Hope's Light took its first hit, and the walls around her exploded in fire and pressure. Dr. Monroe's final thought wasn't of fear, but of disbelief. Even in her darkest nightmares, she never thought someone would target Earth's medics. It wasn't just an act of war. It was something far worse. It was a message. Back on Earth, the footage played across every major channel. Satellite relays transmitted the attack live, unintentionally broadcasting the destruction of the relief fleet to billions. Families of the medics screamed in horror as they watched their loved ones vanish. Children pointed at the screen and asked why the healing ships were burning. Journalists tried to interpret it as a mistake, a tragic misfire. But then came the final broadcast, ripped from Hope's Light's last black box, a voice in Vorax, repeating the words, "No more mercy." The Earth's United Nations went into emergency session. The Galactic Concord filed official war crimes report. Protests broke out in colonies and city stations. But while politicians shouted and debated, someone else was already moving in silence deep within Earth's military archives. Buried in a classified facility beneath the Siberian ice, a sealed vault lit up for the first time in 30 years. Inside it were names long erased from official rosters. Protocols once considered too dangerous to exist. Locked beneath 6 levels of clearance was a single file, marked with a red symbol, a scalpel across a skull. A woman in a dark uniform stood before the console. Her face was calm, eyes unreadable. Her name was Commander Raina Kale, and she hadn't been seen in public since the end of the Orion conflicts. She didn't speak as the vault opened. She simply placed her palm on the scanner and whispered one word, "Awaken." The signal traveled across black channels, bouncing through coded satellites, invisible to the public eye. Cryopods opened. Hidden stations lit up. Old ships, sleek and silent, lifted from forgotten hangars on the far side of Mars. No flags. No transponders. Only designations beginning with R0, the Reaper class. They had been built not for defense, but for retribution. For a time when Earth's enemies would cross a line no civilized species should cross. When mercy was answered with blood. The Reapers had no political oversight, no diplomatic restraints. They weren't soldiers. They were instruments of surgical vengeance. As their ships left orbit, civilians and news channels never noticed them. There were no public launches, no speeches. Only a cold ripple across military command as the oldest protocol of all was activated. The Voraks, in their arrogance, believed they had struck fear into humanity's heart. That Earth would retreat, beg for peace, or threaten with warships. But they had not struck fear. They had ignited something else, something far older, far colder. Because Earth had a rule, doctors and medics are sacred. They go where others won't. They save enemies as well as allies. They heal without judgment. They offer mercy. But if you strike them down, you don't just start a war. You awaken the ones who do not give mercy in return. The galaxy would learn this truth very soon. And it would begin with the return of the Reapers. The cold silence of deep space was broken only by the soft hum of the ISV Silent Mercy, a ship unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Its hull was painted pure white, with no visible weapons or even antennas, just a sleek, clean design that resembled a floating hospital more than a warship. Yet inside, the atmosphere was tense, heavy with the weight of a mission that could change everything. Commander Reyna Kale stood on the bridge, her dark eyes scanning the starfield ahead through the wide viewports. Her uniform was crisp, a stark contrast to the calm and precision she carried like armor. She had been asleep, locked away in cryogenic stasis, for nearly 3 decades since the end of the Orion conflicts, but now she was awake because a new order had been given. The attack on Earth's medics was no mistake or accident. It was a deliberate act of cruelty, a line crossed in the cold void of space that humanity would never forget. And so, Protocol Red Star had been activated. The Reapers, as they were called, were about to awaken. Reyna had no illusions about what this meant. The galaxy knew her only as a shadow in old war archives, a leader of the deadliest covert units, experts in surgical strikes and psychological warfare. The Reapers were designed to be the ultimate response, not only to fight, but to dismantle and erase threats before they could grow. Now, after all these years, they were the sword that Earth wielded to make a statement no enemy could ignore. As the Silent Mercy slipped silently from the hangar on the dark side of Mars, other Reaper ships followed. They moved like ghosts, avoiding detection with stealth technology so advanced that even Vorak sensors failed to register them. Reyna's mind was sharp, calculating the first targets. They would not meet the enemy fleet head-on. No fleet battles or star volleys would decide this war. Instead, the Reapers would strike where the Voraks were weakest, at their forward bases, supply depots, command centers, anything that kept their war machine running. The objective was clear: cripple the enemy without unnecessary bloodshed, and make them understand that Earth's medics were not to be touched. "Activate Protocol Red Star," Reyna ordered quietly, her voice firm but calm. Her tactical officer pressed a console, and an encrypted signal flashed across the Reaper network. It was a call to arms unlike any before, a signal that told every Reaper operative to move into position, to prepare for surgical strikes against the Voraks. Meanwhile, far across the stars, the Voraks remained unaware of the shadow closing around them. They had expected an angry response from Earth, maybe a fleet or two, but nothing like this. Their leaders boasted that no human force could reach their outer bases without being detected and destroyed. Their arrogance blinded them to the fact that these ships were not soldiers in armor, but hunters dressed in white coats and silence. The first target was a small Voraks research station on a barren moon named Kalthar, critical for developing new weapons and medical tech. At precisely 400 hours standard time, a single Reaper ship detached from the fleet and descended silently through the thin atmosphere. On board, the Reaper operatives prepared with clinical efficiency. They were not the soldiers of old, they moved with the calm precision of surgeons. Their weapons were designed for speed and silence, no explosions, no alarms, only swift and deadly precision. When they landed, the station's sensors barely registered a disturbance until it was too late. The Reapers moved through corridors like shadows, disabling power grids and communications in moments. Not a single enemy guard was left alive to raise an alarm, but their destruction was surgical, leaving nothing to chance. After 20 minutes, the station was nothing but a smoking ruin, and the only message left was transmitted across the Vorax networks. A simple, chilling phrase in multiple languages, including the Vorax tongue: "We are not warriors. We are surgeons. And you are the disease." Panic rippled through Vorax command centers as news of the attack spread. This was not a standard assault, it was a warning. The Reapers weren't here for conquest. They were here for eradication of the insult the attack on Earth's medics. Fear took hold among the Vorax troops, rumors spreading of ghost-like enemies who could strike anywhere and disappear without trace. The fear was contagious, breaking down morale faster than any bombardment could. Earth's allies watched closely as the Reapers began a pattern of rapid, precise strikes. Not once did they overextend or waste resources. They dismantled supply lines, freed captive medical staff, and used psychological warfare to keep the enemy off balance. Some in the Galactic Concord began to whisper that the Reapers were not merely fighters, but instruments of something far darker, an execution force born from humanity's darkest wars, but refined to exact cold justice. Back aboard the Silent Mercy, Commander Kale monitored every strike with icy detachment. She knew that what they were doing would terrify many across the stars, but she also knew it was necessary. To protect the medics, to protect humanity's honor, they had to send a message so strong that no enemy would ever consider attacking a healer again. And so, the Reapers continued their campaign, always moving with ghost-like stealth, never giving the enemy a moment to regroup. The Vorax found their communications hacked, their war plans leaked, and their bases destroyed one after another. Commanders who once roared with confidence now whispered of the ghost surgeons stalking them from the shadows. Yet Earth said nothing publicly of the Reapers. To the galaxy, they were still medics, diplomats, and peacekeepers. But hidden beneath that veneer was a promise: if you harm Earth's healers, you will face a force unlike any other, a force that does not give mercy, but only delivers precise and final judgment. As the stars shifted in the vast emptiness, one truth became clear: this war would not be won by guns or fleets alone. It would be won by the scalpel in the dark, by the silent fury that awakened when the first scalpel fell. The night sky over the Vorax forward base of Thalrex was cold and silent, broken only by the soft blinking of warning lights inside the sprawling complex. Soldiers paced the corridors, their weapons ready, expecting the next wave of the war to crash against their defenses. They had heard whispers, rumors of a new enemy moving through the shadows, but no one believed those stories. To the Vorax, the humans were predictable, their strengths clear and their weaknesses obvious. Yet none had anticipated the truth. As the stars shimmered above, a single white dropship detached from the darkness beyond the outer atmosphere. It glided down, not with the roar of engines, but with the silent grace of a ghost. Inside, the Reapers prepared as always, without emotion, but with the precision of master surgeons. Their armor was white and smooth, designed to mirror the uniforms of the medics they protected, yet each was armed with weapons that could dismantle an entire battalion before a single alarm was raised. The Vorax sentries spotted the dropship only moments before it touched down inside the base perimeter. They opened fire, but the bullets struck an invisible shield that absorbed each impact silently. Panic spread through the command center when the base lost power all at once. Sensors died, communications cut. The Reapers moved fast, using the blackout as cover to infiltrate the heart of the facility. One by one, the Vorax soldiers found themselves facing an enemy they could not predict or see clearly. The Reapers did not shout battle cries. They did not charge recklessly. They advanced with cold, calculated steps, disabling security systems, cutting off reinforcements, and taking out key targets with surgical efficiency. The eerie silence of their advance was broken only by the soft hum of their weapons and the mechanical clicks as they reloaded with lightning speed. Entire units were neutralized before they even realized a fight had started. In less than 6 minutes, the Vorax base was crippled. Power grids were destroyed, weapon caches emptied, and critical data wiped clean. The Reapers left no survivors who could mount a counterattack, only the dead and the crippled equipment they had come to disable. Before they departed, the Reapers sent a message back through the disrupted networks, a haunting phrase broadcasted in multiple languages, including the guttural Vorax dialect, "We are not warriors. We are surgeons. And you are the disease." This cryptic message sent ripples of fear throughout the Vorax forces, shaking their confidence like nothing else could. Commanders began to question their strategies, wondering if this new enemy could be defeated by force alone, or if something far more dangerous had emerged, an enemy who struck not with brute strength, but with precision and cold calculation. Across the galaxy, news of the attack spread quickly. Vorax warlords sent frantic calls for reinforcements and intelligence, but the Reapers were already several steps ahead. Using hacked communication channels, they sowed confusion among the Vorax, leaking false information that led enemy fleets to wrong locations or into ambushes. The Reapers' campaign was not just about destruction, it was psychological warfare at its finest. Their strikes were unpredictable and impossible to anticipate. Unlike traditional armies that used overwhelming firepower or sheer numbers, the Reapers used stealth, intelligence, and timing to dismantle entire systems. No one knew when or where they would appear next, but the message was always the same: harm Earth's medics and face extinction. Meanwhile, Commander Raina Kyle observed the unfolding chaos from the ISV Silent Mercy. Her eyes reflected cold determination. For her, this was justice, not revenge. The Reapers were tools, extensions of Earth's will to protect its own, and to make sure no enemy would ever think twice about attacking its healers. As she planned the next move, the broader strategy began to take shape. The Reapers would continue striking at the Vorax supply chains, isolating their front lines, and rescuing any captured Earth medics or innocent civilians still held captive. Each mission was carefully planned to minimize collateral damage while maximizing the enemy's sense of helplessness. The Vorax, once brash and sure of victory, now found themselves haunted by an invisible enemy wearing white coats instead of armor. Whispers spread among their ranks of ghost surgeons, deadly phantoms who appeared from nowhere, struck without mercy, and vanished like smoke. Morale fell, and mistrust grew within their command. Meanwhile, the rest of the Galactic Concord watched with a mixture of shock and awe. Many species had doubted Earth's ability to respond to the brutal attack on their medics. They expected a traditional military retaliation or diplomatic protests, but the Reapers' campaign was something else entirely: calm, precise, terrifying in its effectiveness. Some began to respect Earth in a way they never had before, understanding that beneath the peacekeeping surface was a force not to be underestimated. Still, there were those who feared what humanity had unleashed. Questions whispered in dark corridors, wondered whether the Reapers would stop, or if their fury would escalate into a full-scale war that could consume the galaxy. But Commander Kale and her team remained focused. This was not about war. It was about protection, about setting a line in the stars. No enemy would dare cross again. The Reapers were not merely fighters. They were surgeons removing a cancer from the body of the galaxy, precise, ruthless, and unforgiving. And with each strike, their legend grew. Earth's medics were sacred, their protection absolute. Those who attacked them would learn that the Reapers carried the scalpel that would cut deeper than any weapon had before. The stars held their breath, waiting to see how this deadly dance would end. The cold emptiness of space held a deadly tension as the Reapers prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. Commander Raina Kyle stood quietly on the bridge of the Silent Mercy, her face unreadable as she studied the holographic map of the Vorax war network. For weeks, the Reapers had moved through the stars like surgical blades, cutting through the enemy's supply lines, command posts, and communication hubs. Every strike was precise, every movement calculated. But now, the enemy was adapting. The Vorax were no longer hiding. Behind their arrogance, they were hunting back. They deployed countermeasures, scrambled sensors, and set traps designed specifically to catch the Reapers. The battlefield had changed. What had once been a war of silent strikes was shifting into a deadly game of cat and mouse. Reyna knew that if the Reapers were to win, they had to understand the anatomy of this war, completely its strengths, weaknesses, and the hidden heart that kept it alive. That heart was the Vorax Central Command Station. It was a massive complex carved into a rocky giant, shielded by layers of defenses, both electronic and physical. This station controlled all Vorax military operations, including fleets, ground forces, and research facilities. Destroying it would cripple their ability to wage war or coordinate any resistance against the Reapers. Yet it was also the most heavily guarded target they could face. Reyna gathered her most skilled operatives for the assault. They were not soldiers, but experts in stealth, sabotage, and intelligence. Each was trained to move like a ghost, to vanish without a trace, and to strike with the precision of a surgeon's hand. The plan was risky. The Reapers would infiltrate Drasil's defenses, disable its shield generators, and plant explosives inside the command core. They would have minutes, maybe less, before the enemy could respond. Time was their deadliest enemy. As the Reapers launched toward Drasil, the Vorax were already aware something was coming. Sensors detected the fleet moving in unusual patterns, and alarms blared through the command station. But despite their readiness, the Vorax could not identify the true nature of the threat. To them, the Reapers were still just a ghost story, a rumor that had become nightmare. The first phase of the attack began with the Reapers using advanced cloaking technology to slip through the asteroid belt's dense debris fields. They avoided patrols, electronic scans, and automated turrets, moving with silent grace toward their target. Inside the command station, panic spread as systems began to fail one by one. Power flickered, communications dropped, and security cameras blacked out. The Reapers were inside. Moving swiftly through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels, they reached the shield generators. Explosives were planted with expert hands, timers set. But before they could retreat, Vorax soldiers flooded the halls, alerted by backup sensors. What followed was a brutal dance in the shadows. The Reapers fought without hesitation, their weapons silent but deadly. Each operative moved with deadly efficiency, eliminating threats before they could react. The sounds of close combat were muffled, broken only by the whispers of fallen enemies and the soft clicks of reloaded weapons. Meanwhile, Reyna herself led a small team to the command core. They faced the station's elite guards, heavily armored and well-trained. The fight was intense but brief. The Reapers' training and technology gave them the edge, and soon the core was exposed. Explosives were placed at critical points, and the countdown began. The Reapers raced against time to evacuate as the station's alarms grew louder. Outside, the shield generators exploded, lighting up the asteroid belt with fiery shockwaves. The command station shook violently as the core charges detonated. Within seconds, the massive fortress began to break apart, fragments scattering into the void. The Vorax fleet, watching from a distance, could only watch helplessly as their central nerve was destroyed. The loss was catastrophic, and the ripple effects immediate. Without central command, Vorax forces struggled to coordinate defenses. Chaos spread among their ranks, and the Reapers' strikes became even more effective. But the war was far from over. As the Reapers regrouped, Reyna reflected on the battle's cost. Though the mission succeeded, the enemy's resistance had grown fiercer. The Vorax were learning, adapting, becoming more dangerous with every encounter. This war was evolving, and so must the Reapers. Yet Reyna knew something more troubling. The Reapers were not just facing soldiers and weapons. They were fighting an enemy that had learned to exploit fear and doubt, turning the uncertainty of war into a weapon itself. The true anatomy of this war was not only in the battles or the technology, but in the minds of those who fought it. And in that truth lay both danger and opportunity. For as the Reapers dismantled the Vorax war machine piece by piece, they were also reshaping the future of warfare. No longer would wars be won by brute force alone. The scalpel had replaced the sword, and precision, strategy, and silent strength would decide the fate of entire worlds. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see who would emerge from this new kind of war, who would survive its deadly anatomy. For Commander Reyna Kyle and the Reapers, the fight was far from over. But they had made their choice: to protect, to punish, and to ensure that no one would ever again dare to strike at Earth's healers without facing the cold justice of the scalpel. The cold void of space stretched endlessly as the ISV Silent Mercy glided silently toward the Vorax homeworld, an enormous planet shrouded in swirling storms and dark clouds. This was the final step in the Reapers campaign, the moment where all the careful strikes and surgical attacks would come to a head. Commander Reyna Kyle stood on the bridge, her expression calm but determined. For months, the Reapers had dismantled the Vorax war machine, piece by piece. They had shattered supply lines, destroyed command centers, and spread fear so deep it gnawed at the enemy's morale. But the Vorax were not defeated yet. Their capital world was heavily guarded, protected by fleets of warships, layers of planetary defenses, and an army ready to fight to the last breath. The Reapers did not come to conquer. They came for one thing: justice for the medics who had been attacked without mercy. Reyna knew the cost of this mission could be high. There would be no grand battles or loud explosions. This was a war fought in shadows, with blades sharper than any sword. The plan was to infiltrate the planet's key medical research facility, the place where Vorax scientists had twisted healing into weapons of destruction. If they could destroy it, they would cut the enemy's power to harm Earth's healers again. As the Silent Mercy approached, the ship's cloaking systems activated. The Reapers would move unseen, like ghosts in the night. Inside the ship, teams prepared their gear, checking weapons, medkits, and stealth suits. Every operative knew what was at stake. No mistakes could be made. Once the ship dropped into the upper atmosphere, the Reapers separated into smaller pods, silently descending through clouds and storms. They landed near the research facility's perimeter without triggering alarms, slipping through the darkened halls like shadows. The base was eerily quiet, but the Reapers sensed the danger lurking behind every corner. Advanced security systems were still active, and guards patrolled with caution. The Reapers used their knowledge and technology to bypass sensors and avoid confrontations wherever possible. But when forced into battle, they struck with brutal precision, swift, silent, and deadly. As they advanced deeper into the facility, they discovered horrific experiments, captured medics twisted into unwilling test subjects, Vorax soldiers injected with deadly viruses designed to spread through human colonies. The Reapers' mission became more than just destruction. It was a rescue operation to save those innocent lives trapped in the enemy's cruelty. They moved fast, planting charges on key equipment and data cores. Every second counted. But the Vorax were not blind. Alarms finally blared, and enemy forces rushed to contain the intruders. The Reapers fought back, their white armor stained with the dark scars of battle. The corridors echoed with the muffled sounds of combat, whispers of death in a war that no one expected to see. Commander Reyna led the charge to the facility's heart, the central lab where the most dangerous research was kept. Here, she faced the Vorax scientist chief, a ruthless leader who sneered at the Reapers' presence. He boasted of his power and the future of his weapons, but Reyna's calm resolve did not waver. The fight was fierce but brief. Reyna's team dismantled the lab's defenses, destroyed research data, and freed the captive medics. As the charges detonated, the facility shook violently, fires erupting in every direction. The Reapers retreated swiftly, disappearing into the night before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Back aboard the Silent Mercy, the mood was solemn but victorious. The mission had cost lives, but the message was clear: Earth's medics were untouchable. Those who dared to harm them would face the scalpel in the dark, precise, unforgiving, and final.